So my name is Felista Sang, Invest in Africa Projects and SME Engagement Coordinator. So as we introduce ourselves on the chat, we'll be introducing the topic of today, and we will also be introducing our guest speaker, Benedict. He's also part of our consultants on the platform, and he's a lawyer by profession. So I'll also try to put the session into context, why we're having this session. We're having this session specifically because of SMEs, to understand why do we need to have legal documents, all our business documents, because we realize that most of our businesses actually operate informally. So this session is basically to understand, why are we doing a formal session? Why do our businesses need a formal session to be formally registered? So we are going to look at this session from a legal perspective. That's why we have Benedict, who is also a legal practitioner, to explain to us why do our businesses need to be legally registered. So we're going to introduce about Invest in Africa, why we're having this session, who is Invest in Africa, what we do, how we were formed. So Invest in Africa is a Pan-African organization. What Pan-Africa means for us is that we are available in several African countries that we'll talk about in the next few slides. Our organization as Invest in Africa, we work with various stakeholders. We have multinational organizations, we have large corporate organizations, we have small corporate organizations, and the biggest of our clients is small, medium enterprises and financial institutions. So we try as much as possible as an organization to link our SMEs to every corporate organization, to every financial organization, to every development partner. So as an organization, that is our role. We are an organization that is a network of several organizations that link our SMEs together. So we believe as an organization that we are a catalyst of SMEs growth, and a catalyst of SMEs to function together. We also engage priority sectors, which is food, agriculture, manufacturing, development, and unlocking SME ecosystem to catalyze SME growth in 3 ways. So we build capacity, we encourage and work with SMEs to access finance. Part of what we do at Invest in Africa are 3 pillars. We do access to finance, access to markets, and access to finance, as well as advocacy policies. We also have an ongoing conversation in government and parliament and resilience. So that is how Invest in Africa is going about our 3 pillars. So our mission as an organization is, our mission as an organization is to empower our entrepreneurs through markets, through access to markets, access to finance. So that's what we said initially, that our core pillars are 3: access to finance, access to markets, and access to finance. Our vision as an organization is to be a leading network of accelerating trade and investment in small and growing businesses in Africa. That's why we are in more than 3 African countries. We are in Kenya, Uganda. Currently, we have Uganda because we have an ongoing project. We have Senegal. We had a project in Mauritania. So we work in mostly African countries to empower our SMEs. So as our market has initially said, is we are in Ghana, Mauritania, Uganda, Senegal, Zambia, and we keep expanding as our projects and as we get opportunities to work with African SMEs in various countries, that we actually think that our vision and our mission will match our SME needs. So as initially said, and I've said that we have a Biashara.Now platform. So our platform is able to put in together where we meet all our corporate organizations. So we have a place that our corporate organizations are able to send in their opportunities, let's say tenders. Like we have an ongoing tender opportunity for Safaricom currently on the platform. We have a JZ project, expression of interest on the platform. So that is how our corporates are able to interact with our SMEs. And we also have Biashara Academy, where we put in everything that we have learned. So from the previous projects that we just concluded, which is MasterCard project, that was 2 years project, everything that we discussed, everything that was trained on is on Biashara Academy. So if you need a session on a particular how to be resilient in your business, how to go about your contracts in your business, those are all available on Biashara Academy. So just log into Biashara Academy, you find any information that you need that is important for your business. The other thing that we do is that our Biashara.Now has over 5,000 SMEs. So Biashara.Now has over 5,000 SMEs. So this is a platform that we encourage you to access, try as much as possible to be familiar with it, and it will be able to help you to link up with other SMEs. So it's a social media sort of, not social media, but it's a place where we can connect with our SMEs and our corporate clients. So our impact in Kenya so far is that we have created over 82,300 jobs. How do we measure the jobs that we have acquired? So every opportunity that an SME is successful with our corporates, we go back and ask, so you got this opportunity. How did your business grow? Have you increased the number of employees that you have been able to have? Or even what you acquired from, you got a supply of business from one SME. So that there's a chain of economic value when one of our SMEs wins an opportunity on the platform. And for Invest in Africa, we have over 5,000 SMEs on the platform. We have trained over 4,000 SMEs, and we have been able to access 7.9 million worth of finance through Invest in Africa, through our linkages. Like, for example, I think last year only, for the past 5 months, we had over 2,000 million worth of finance being accessed in dollars by our SMEs through the access to finance pillar. So we take ensuring that our SMEs become bankable, bank ready, and they can actually access financing. So it is a win-win for all of us. This is something that we are so proud of, and we believe that more can be achieved because the kind of requests that come through versus the number of financing that our SMEs get is not matching. So we are still working towards more capacity building, more ensuring that our SMEs have the right pitch decks to meet the donors and funders. So those are the opportunities that we'll be discussing on Friday with our our consultant, SRC, and EY will be talking to SMEs on different funders, and we'll also have around 4 funders in the room speaking on Friday. So if you have an opportunity, please log in on Friday from 9 to 10:30. So we'll have around 4 funders speaking to us about what do they need when it comes to funding, what are their specific priorities. So that is what the session will be having on Friday. Jean, next slide, please. So we are going to speak about today's session. Why are we having a legal compliance session? So as previously said, that we realize that yes, we have over 5,000 SMEs. Most of our SMEs have actually not completed the onboarding process and the verification process. So they might be missing one document. One document in this case would be a tax compliance certificate or even a business permit, county business permit. But not all businesses actually require the business permit. But when it comes to getting opportunities from the government, opportunities from the corporate organizations, these are the requirements. So right now as Invest in Africa, we may not need it, but when you get an opportunity, how do we go about that? So that is what we're having this session today, that is facilitated by Benedict Nzioki. Benedict is part of our consultants on the platform. We have worked with Benedict as Invest in Africa during our MasterCard project, and he's been able to guide our SMEs through the legal process. So that is why we're having them today to speak to us about the legal process of right documentation. When we say that you're not formally registered, what does it really mean from a legal perspective? So Benedict is a partner at Africa Law and also a specialist on dispute resolution, corporate, commercial estate planning, property development, and competition law. He's also well versed in the legal surrounding mergers, acquisition, and private equity funding. So, when it comes to financing, access to finance, what would it mean in a legal perspective for you? That you're acquiring different kind of fundings. We also have to look at it from a legal perspective, and um, Benedict is well versed in that. That is why I'm having him in this session. That it's not just about property, it's not just about legal perspective, but also when you are acquiring funding, what does it mean legally for you? What does it mean for your business? So he's all well rounded for us to be working with him and also to understand that as SMEs, we just don't need one legal perspective. We need an all-rounded business. So that is why we're having Benedict to speak to us today. He's also advised on development of one of the largest mixed user developments in East and Central Asia. Benedict holds a Bachelor of Law honors degree from Strathmore University. So Benedict, karibu. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll just go back to the chat before Benedict speaks and tells us what we need to be formally registered as a business. So we have Mark from Kent, Africa. Mark is says that they provide feasibility studies, architectural designs, interior designs, and structural and civil engineering designs, mechanical, electrical engineering. Mark, it's a pleasure to meet you. We have Wiesen HR. Good morning, all. Lisa here representing Wiesen HR. We provide services that enables SMEs to outsource the management of HR. You can reach us. She shared her email and they're also their website. Lisa, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. I think that is one session that we should be running very soon on how to do. Now that COVID is over, most of SMEs are taking back their employees. What would it mean to them from a human resource perspective? It's a pleasure to meet you, Lisa. Benedict, karibu. Thank you so much, everybody.
All right, thank you all. Thank you, Felicitas and the entire team from IIA for once again engaging myself and Africa Law Partners in this, very useful session for MSMEs. So I will just proceed just to do a quick introduction about Africa Law Partners. We are coming up to being about 3 years old from our inception, and Africa Law Partners is a boutique corporate commercial law firm with its seat in Nairobi, Kenya. We are also members of Eastfield, which is an international association of professional service providers, from accountants to tax experts to lawyers to financial advisors. And we, by virtue of being members of Eastfield, we have presence in 5 continents and 75 countries around the globe. The practice areas that Africa Law Partners engages in are as listed there, from corporate law, finance, tax, M&A, general and structured finance, Islamic finance, real estate and construction, IP, dispute resolution, private client, capital markets, competition, or as Americans call it, antitrust, corporate governance, data protection and privacy, fintech, and employment and labor law. So this is some of the some of the work that is worth noting that Africa Law Partners and the partners have undertaken over the past few years. Yeah, so as I had mentioned, this is just some of the work that that Africa Law Partners and we have been involved in over the last couple of years, in advising some of our noteworthy clients. All right. So without anything further in terms of introductions, I think I'll just proceed straight to why we're here today. And the background is that legal registration and documentation are vital requirements for any business operating in Kenya. Several business owners operate their businesses informally, citing that their formal business operation is a problem due to the lengthy and costly procedures of formal acquisition of business documents or otherwise registration. So studies show that MSMEs are run without an understanding of the benefits of acquiring legal documentation and becoming business and legally compliant, ensuring that they can access bigger business opportunities, as well as portraying a positive image and consumer trust. Formal business registration allows the business owners to perceive their business as separate and different entities from themselves, resulting in minimal lawsuits, fines, or other forms of personal liability. I guess I don't need to go through this because the team from Invest in Africa already went through this. So the key objectives of this session are two: sensitization of MSMEs on Biashara.Now and the importance of having legal documentation, and providing a way forward to MSMEs on acquisition of legal documents to become verified suppliers on Biashara.Now. So I'll just touch on the various forms of the various legal forms that a business can take. And starting with the first box is the form of a company. So a company can be of three forms: either a private company, a public company, or company limited by guarantee. A private company is fairly easy to form, and these are processes that can easily be undertaken on the eCitizen platform. So perhaps maybe just to mention that as a business owner, or just generally as a Kenyan citizen, eCitizen has really helped smoothen some processes that were a nightmare, a number of years ago. I remember when I first formed a private company limited by shares, it took me about 3 to 4 months, because then people had to go physically to the AG's chambers to file your IDs and your KRA pin and everything. Essentially all the documents that you nowadays upload on eCitizen, CR1, CR2, CR9, all that. It had to be done physically, and then you'd have to interact with the clerks who are there. Some are even brokers, so you're not even sure who's a staff member there. It was just a very chaotic process. It took about 4 months, and nowadays on eCitizen, registration of a private company limited by shares or companies in general is a process that could take about a week or even less, a couple of days if all your documents are in order. As you're uploading them on eCitizen. So we have a private company limited by shares, which is one of the most common forms that a business takes. So formation of this, as I said, is easily done on eCitizen. You just upload all the documents required. The forms are system generated, so you just print out, execute, scan, and re-upload on the platform, and then the back-end processes take place, and then in no time, as I said, about a week or less, you have your certificate of incorporation and the CR12, which lists the directors and shareholders, as well as the shareholding of each respective shareholder. There's also a public company, which is a company now that is essentially for when you have very many shareholders, over 50, I believe, under the new Companies Act. And so you have the option of forming a public company limited by shares. A lot of, most all listed companies are public companies limited by shares. A CLG is a company limited by guarantee. This is usually used. So the private company and the public company limited by shares are usually mostly used for businesses that aim to generate a profit. While on the other hand, a company limited by guarantee, more often than not, is usually for entities that are carrying out charitable activities, such as some like human rights groups and all that, they can take the form of a company limited by guarantee. Or the only one issue with a company limited by guarantee is that it may take an inordinately long amount of time to set up and fully register. And the reason for this is that because of the nature of some of the activities that are carried out by a company limited by guarantee.
What's wrong? She's holding onto my arm. It's hurting me. Hurry up.
Sorry. As I was saying, a company limited by guarantee may take an inordinately long amount of time, up to maybe about even from 6 months, sometimes up to a number of years, because the directors or the promoters of a company limited by guarantee are usually vetted by the National Intelligence Service before registration of a CLG is complete. Closely linked with a company limited by guarantees, just below there is the issue of a trust. There are two forms of trust. There is an incorporated trust and an unincorporated trust. An unincorporated trust is easily set up by the drafting or drawing up of a trust deed, which is taken to the Ministry of Lands for stamping, and that's it. It comes to effect. And an incorporated trust, which is much like a CLG, because it is also mostly set up for charitable activities as opposed to for-profit activities. And this one might also take quite a number of quite a number of months to have it fully registered, because the certificate of registration is usually signed by the minister, by the minister, in this case being the lands minister, and it may also require that the promoters of the same undergo National Intelligence Service vetting as well. One of the important things to note about a trust, both incorporated and unincorporated, is that depending on the purpose for which you are setting this up, you might need to notify certain entities. And I'll give an example. We are involved in a matter now with a certain financial institution that has refused to recognize an unincorporated trust. The trust deed was set up properly. It was stamped at the Ministry of Lands, but the financial institution is of the opinion that this should have been brought to them before the settlor of that trust passed away, because they chose to dispose of their assets on earth via a trust. And so the financial institution has refused to release the funds to the trustee to distribute to the beneficiaries because of that small hiccup. So in the process of setting up a trust, it is important to get legal advice, because you may need to notify people like financial institutions or other institutions that may be involved in the objects of that trust, just to avoid any future form of dispute or misunderstanding. Then we have a partnership. Partnership takes forms. You can have a general partnership, a limited partnership, and a limited liability partnership. A general partnership is where all the partners do not have limited liability. So that means that in the event of if there is liability to be borne by anyone, it is not borne by the body itself or by the partnership itself. It is borne by the partners. A limited partnership, on the other hand, is where only there is a general partner who runs the day-to-day activities of the business, and then there are limited partners who you'll find mostly are usually financiers to the partnership. So they will take the form of limited partners, so that their liability is limited, so that in the event that the partnership runs into some trouble, they are not personally liable, and only the general partner is, because the general partner is involved in the day-to-day running of the partnership. A limited liability partnership simple, which is what Africa Law Partners is. It's a limited liability partnership. It's where all partners have limited liability. So if Africa Law Partners, using it as an example, runs into any form of trouble, myself as a partner, I will not be individually liable, you know, in whatever trouble, unless obviously there are some exceptions where you can show, you know, some form of misconduct, etc., or fraud and all that. Then I will be individually liable. So just stopping there for a bit, I would wish now to clarify that the importance of formal registration of your business is, it all hinges on that little or big fact of liability, the big issue of liability. So the formal registration process, sometimes it may be a pain and all that, but in the long run, it is much safer for you as an entrepreneur, because it limits your liability to a great extent. I mean, unless you're involved in some shady dealings where then, you know, as you say, the corporate veil can be lifted, and then, you know, the authorities can come and nab you, or your creditors or whoever can come and nab you. The advantage of formally registering your business in whichever of the forms I've described is the idea of your own personal and individual protection from liability occurring as a result of the activities of your business. One of the other things that I would mention as well, just quickly, though it's not a formal form of business, is a joint venture. A joint venture is simply that two parties, two businesses, two companies, two partnerships come together, sign a joint venture agreement or any form of other agreement of that kind, for the purpose of undertaking a specific task or a specific endeavor. So a joint venture is simply an agreement signed by two or more parties who wish to perform a common task, make profit, and then perhaps the joint venture then can be terminated, or, you know, it can continue for a certain given period of time. A joint venture, as I said, is not a formal legal entity by itself, because a joint venture agreement will prescribe what form the joint venture would take. It could be a partnership, it could be one of the three forms of companies listed there, being set up just to perform a specific task, and then after that, the promoters of the same can choose to wind it up. Lastly, one of the other important forms that I'd wish to mention is sole proprietorship, although this is no longer becoming, it's not as common as it used to be, because people have become aware of the advantages of proper formal registration. A sole proprietorship was simply one person registering and running a business by themselves, and a sole proprietorship, the license used to usually be given by the city council, in the different municipalities that were there. But now this is not as common. I haven't. We've actually assisted quite a number of people transition from sole proprietorship, to formal companies or formal partnerships, because that affords better cover from liability. So I'll wish to leave the various forms there and maybe just touch on a couple of other points that I thought would be important in terms of compliance. And in relation with Biashara.Now, aside from the formal registration process, depending on in the various industries that your business may be operating in, say the manufacturing sector, maybe the financial sector, maybe the energy sector, and all that. Sometimes you'll find that aside from the formal registration, because of the nature of the business you're engaged in the industry that you're engaged in, you'll be required to get further registration from various regulators of the various sectors. So I'll just mention some of these people. Obviously, aside from formal registration, you'll obviously be required to get a KRA tax PIN for purposes of payment of taxes. If you're in the communication industry, you might be required to get approval or registration by the Communications Authority of Kenya. In terms of intellectual property, you will need to register and acquire, your trademarks, patents, and all that from the Kenya Industrial Property Institute (KIPI), or registration of a copyright on Kekobo from Kekobo. But Kekobo has become quite easy to deal with because all their services are online, and getting a copyright registered on the Kekobo website is, it takes a matter of about 2 or 3 days. For the youth and women and persons with disabilities businesses, you will perhaps want to also apply for and get an AGPO certificate, which then allows you access to, if you're involved in tenders. Some entities, including the government, have special tenders set aside for youth, women, and persons with disabilities. So if you fall in that category, getting an AGPO certificate would also be important. If you're in the energy sector, you might need to check with the Ministry of Energy what sort of certifications you require with EPRA, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. If you're in the finance sector, you will want to check, with the Central Bank of Kenya and the Capital Markets Authority, what licenses you will require for whatever business activity you're engaged in. If you're in the food industry, or other consumables, then you will want to get certifications from KEBS. If you're exporting agricultural produce, you will want to get certifications from HCDA, the Horticultural Development Authority, and such like institutions. So the idea is that as you're setting out on your business, it is important to get legal advice so that you are very clear on what licenses and registrations you will require, because sometimes people can start operating and you don't realize that by virtue of your business activity in the finance sector, for example, you fall under the legislation setting up the CMA, the legislation setting up the CBK, and so you may keep on going about your business activities, and then one day officers from the CMA or the CBK show up and tell you, you've been doing this, you are supposed to get this license and registrations, you haven't. Then now you're in trouble with them. It becomes a matter for the authorities to deal with. Sometimes you can even be barred from doing any business in that sector for a number of years by virtue of you not obtaining the right licenses and registrations for the business that you're involved in. One other authority or group of an authority that depending on the business you're in, you might want to get licenses and registrations from them are the county governments across the 47 counties. It's become easier now with especially, if I can use Nairobi City County as an example, with the generation of the Unified Business Permit, the UBP, where a couple of years back you had to get a fire license and all that. You had to have together about 10 licenses, but all these have now been unified into one, where you just apply for and get the Unified Business Permit, which you renew every year. Moving on, coming to a close, one of the other things that I would wish to mention is the importance of having the internal business documents all well in order. And an example of such would be, for example, employee contracts and supplier contracts. It is important from the very beginning to ensure that all your employees, if you have any, it's very clear the kind of role that they play. And maybe in another session we can go deeper into employee contracts and supplier contracts and all that, but it is very important to define, because you do not want to find yourself in a situation where your employee is not happy with what's going on, and then you find yourself at the labor office or at the labor court, and you have all these fines, because most of these institutions that are there to protect employees are very they can come down on you very hard. They can come down very harshly on you, and the fines that have been handed down have not been cheap. So it will be important to make sure that your employee contracts, thinking of the two kinds of employee contracts being either contracts of service or contracts for service. So you'll find that the contracts for service are usually supplier contracts. They are independent contractors. So if you're hiring a person, it will be very important to be very distinct and clear in the employee contract whether you're employing them as an employee in the normal sense of the word as defined under the Employment Act, or whether they are an independent contractor, and the two have different obligations. So if it's a contract for service where someone is an independent contractor or supplier, it's usually just generally governed by the terms, written in black and white in the contract. Whereas if someone is an employee or under contract of service, then you will need to do NHIF registration, NSSF registration. You'll be withholding payee and all that. So all these two different kinds of employee contracts come with different obligations. So that's why I'm saying it's very clear to understand that and to make sure that this is very well laid out in their respective contracts. The other internal documentation that would need to be very clear would be all forms of policies. And again, this differs from business activity to business activity. And so you will also require guidance from HR specialists. And I've seen there's, I think, one or two in today. You require guidance from lawyers as well, so that you get all your policies in order, not only to ensure the smooth running of the business, but also just in case any issues arise between yourself as an employer and with the employees or with suppliers. The policies are very clear, and the procedures to be taken when issues arise are also very clear. And this also helps save businesses from unnecessary disputes and misunderstandings and all that. Then, as an entrepreneur, if you are in league with other people, if you're working with either partners or other directors or shareholders, it's also important to get documents between yourselves clear and from the very beginning. If it's a partnership deed, you make sure the partnership deed is clear, is agreed to by all the partners. Everyone appends their signature, and it's kept safe. Everyone has a copy, and just in case of any disputes that arise, it's the procedures for settling the disputes are clear. If it's shareholders in a company, then maybe you'd want to have a shareholders agreement, just to know what happens in case, for example, someone wants to sell their shares. Do they offer it to the other shareholders first? Which are preemption rights? Do you waive them? So that if one day, maybe one of the shareholders is no longer happy and they want to leave, or they want to buy someone else's shares within the company, the process is agreed to, the process is understood. Then generally speaking, you'll also want to have a list or have all material contracts between the company, either internally or externally, very, very, very well drafted, very well understood, because sometimes some of these material contracts may have provisions in them that you'll find yourself have been in breach of without even having realized that. For example, one of the things that people usually put in some material contracts is that if the shareholding changes or if the structure of the business changes, whether it's a partnership or company, you're supposed to notify the counterparty to that agreement. And sometimes you'll find that by failure of notifying the changes in shareholding or structure, you are in breach. And then you wake up one morning and you find yourself with a with a lawyer's letter, or worse even, being served with court papers for breaching a contract that you did not even know you had breached. So I think now I can stop there, because I can stop there, and then guess with the guidance of Felicitas, we can have questions.
Yes, Wahiga, can see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you very much for that presentation, sir. Really appreciate. Was a good quick one. I would like to ask, what are the tax obligations for a limited by guarantee company? I've been running a CLG for the last 8 years. Yeah, 8 years, and I just wanted to know. I usually once in a while have to have interesting discussions with KRA of our tax obligations, be it VAT or general taxes. What are the obligations? How can we navigate through that space? Also, what leeways do we have in terms of the taxes that we don't need to pay, or for the waivers that we can ask for? Yes, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Wahiga. Most of the CLGs that I've seen usually have a tax exemption certificate, usually issued by, by the minister. So but I think that's usually dependent on the type of activity that the CLG is engaged in. If it's charitable activities, you could always apply to the minister for a tax exemption certificate. So I don't know if you're engaged in charitable activities, or not for profit activities.
Mixed. It's mixed. At times we have for profit activities, but we reuse the money within the organization for the projects that we are running. So I don't know how to categorize that, because even the last conversation we had with KRA, even with my accountant, was a bit funny. And we keep having that conversation every 2-3 years. We kind of have the same conversation. They also don't know how to place us exactly.
Right. Okay. So with CLGs, sometimes the structuring of the entity is what is even most important to allow you to perhaps enjoy some of the tax benefits. So, for example, if we would not advise that the CLG be running both the profit and the non-profit aspects of your activities. So what we would usually advise is that you set up, for example, a company, either a private or public company limited by shares, which will be undertaking the for-profit activities, and then we will now structure it in a way that all the funds, all the profits generated go to fund the activities of the CLG. So sometimes we usually advise on the separation of those two, because when you merge them, the activities, like you're saying, KRA will always be coming back to have uncomfortable conversations, because sometimes you tell them, I'm engaged in this charitable activity, but I have to do this to get money to carry out my charitable activities. Then they don't get that. But if the separation is very clear, then it makes it much easier to even do a tax structuring. But on other tax obligations, I think I'll have my partner Samuel, who's the tax expert at Africa Law, perhaps drop you an email, maybe just explaining some of the tax obligations that a CLG should ordinarily be paying, and then we can take it up from there.
Thank you very much. So, sorry to ask, just a last one in follow-up to what you've said. So, which would be the parent company? Would it be the CLG, or would it be the limited company? Because I definitely want to take the tax advantages, the tax benefits present, but also still want to pay tax as a Kenyan. But definitely for the survival of the business and all that, which one would be the parent company?
You could structure it either way, but we would advise to have the for-profit company limited by shares being one of the promoters of the CLG, or one of the members of the CLG, and then so that
like a subsidiary.
I would not say a subsidiary per se, because remember, company limited by guarantee is just it's not like a company limited by shares. You're guaranteeing a payment of the liabilities of the CLG up to a certain up to a certain amount. So the company would come in as a member, and they would have their liability limited to to the amount they're guaranteeing, say maybe 500,000, a million, all that, so that the line is clear that this for-profit company engages in activities ABC, and then the funds come here. And this person is also a member and the company is a member that's contributing to the funds of the CLG.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Wahiga, for that question. Anyone else who has a question, feel free to put your hand up. At this point, we'd like to pass a vote of thanks to Benedict for taking us through the session. We are glad to have learned about legal business compliance for entrepreneurs. And maybe you can put your contacts on the screen so that in case someone would need to reach out to you for further advice, they can do so. But we thank you so much for your time and for the content that you've shared with us today.
In response to yes, a parting shot would be, I think it's important for all MSMEs, all business people to understand the value of being compliant. Sometimes there's a temptation to take the easier route out and decide, to dodge or to pay certain people off. But from my experience, what we have seen and what we have handled is that all these always come back, to bite. And sometimes, and I'm sure over the last couple of months in the press, you've seen, the tax man coming to get some people, and then they claim huge amounts, including penalties, interest, and all that. And then it can become a pain. It can force your business to shut down. So I cannot stress enough the value of always being compliant, always getting good legal advice, good tax advice, good HR advice as you're starting out your business. Because even if you start out and you say, maybe I'm an MSME, I don't have the capacity, I don't have the finances maybe to get advice here and there. Later, when now you want to straighten everything out, it becomes extremely expensive. And sometimes you'll find that your business has grown so much, you've even lost track of things. And even when financials come, investors and all that, and they start doing their due diligence, then things start coming up, and then you end up losing the finances or the investment that you are looking for. So it's very important for everyone to always get sound advice when starting out their businesses. I think that would be my parting shot. Thank you.
Thank you, Benedict. We'd also appreciate just one parting shot from our country manager, Terry.
Good morning, everybody. And as Felicitas has said, I am Terry Kenya. I'm the country manager, Invest in Africa, Kenya. Very delighted that you were able to join and participate in today's session. Thank you very much. Be on the lookout for other upcoming sessions. To our speaker of the day, Benedict, that was a very insightful session. Thank you very much. And I think if we take away nothing else, as he has said, always be compliant. No excuses, no shortcuts. Always be compliant. Thank you very much to the IIA team also for organizing this very valuable session. Thank you and have a good day.